I'm Eric Trometer. Thank you for listening to UK Cinema History. This week, episode 40, The Eagle Has Landed, directed by John Sturges and starring Michael Caine and Robert Duvall. The Eagle Has Landed, 1976. I don't know if you wanted to start with your reflections first, Ty, or wanted to let Kathy and me go first like we did last week. I'm going to leave it up to you since you were the first in the ABR order.
No, I'll go first. Last week was an aberration. I wanted to basically do meta comments instead of usual comments. This is going to be usual comments per virtually every other room. Um, I loved this movie, and I am so grateful to you, Eric, for picking it. Um, this to me is one of the greatest war movies of all time. Not just World War II, just war in general. I've seen a lot of war movies. I really like this genre. Um, I thought it was magnificent, and I mean, it's got a dynamite cast. Let me bring it up here. Um, Michael Caine, Donald Sutherland, Robert Duvall, Donald Pleasance, Anthony Quayle, Gene Marsh. Just a astonishing group of talents. And for my money, the Donald Sutherland as Devlin, one of the greatest characters in movie history. He comes out of the movie as like a three-dimensional character. He's like his own movie. Uh, and the thing with the whistling and the dogs, just incredible. What an amazing way to end. So it's and it's so well written. Um, a script by, let's see, the script is by uh, Tom Mankiewicz off of Jack Higgins' novel. The Jack Higgins novel by the same title, The Eagle Has Landed, was on the New York Times bestseller list for 35 weeks straight. So it was a monumentally popular book. And Tom Mankiewicz said um, the screenplay he created from it is the best screenplay he'd ever written. And I believe that. I mean, it's superbly written, and it's just so every step of the way there are wonderful surprises. Everything is everything subverts expectations. It's constantly going against cliches, going against what you might expect, and it's constantly delightfully surprising us. And part of that is that for it to work, it has to make Nazis and anti US and British forces to be likable and for us to care about them, emotionally bond with them. And that's necessary because when we're watching the movie, we're on some level, we're all going, yeah, but they didn't manage to kill Churchill. I mean, I know they didn't manage to kill Churchill. So on some level, the, there's not a, an element of suspense in terms of, oh, I hope they don't kill Churchill, because that's not going to happen. So the suspense has to some extent, be on the Nazis and on Devlin, and so it does a wonderful job of making us care about these characters that stand for everything that is evil. And so that's not a small thing to pull off. And I think it does a wonderful job of that. And of course, in terms of, uh, I know they're not going to kidnap or kill Churchill. And there's no spoiler. Uh, we're not worrying about spoilers for this room. In fact, they do manage effectively to kill Churchill, which is a brilliant twist. Um, and then it turns out, no, that wasn't Churchill. So it's just, and there were, I mean, that's based in fact, there were doppelgangers for major leaders like Churchill. So it's just a brilliant series of surprises and twists. um, so it's just a wonderfully written story, really clever, and beautifully acted by real stars. And by the way, uh, Jean Marsh uh, arguably gives the most realistic and nuanced performance in the film, the deepest performance in the film. And aside from, of course, Donald Sutherland, who is just, well, he's not realistic. He's like, he's more like in a different universe. But for realism, Jean Marsh, I think, gives the most layered performance. And I think, really ironic and appropriate that she's the one who ends up killing Larry Hagman. And on some level, you feel she's killing him not because he's an American, but she's killing him for his acting. Uh, that Larry Hagman's performance was so over the top that it's like you could imagine Jean Marsh just saying, I have to kill him. I just can't stand it anymore. So there's that. Speaking of casting, um, a few little tidbits. Deborah Carr was offered the role of Joanna Gray, um, and Mia Farrow was offered the role of Molly. Um, so those would have been interesting choices. As for Devlin, um, it was originally not only offered but actually accepted by Richard Harris. Richard Harris was cast to be Devlin, and he was forced to drop out after he caused an uproar by attending a fundraiser for the provisional IRA in the US. So he actually was too realistic for his part, and he ended up losing his role because he was too on the money for the role. So I thought that was fascinating. I think, Richard Harris would have been terrific in it, but I can't think of anyone playing it as well as Donald Sutherland. So I think that worked out. By the way, Donald Sutherland, not like not that long afterwards, in 1981, he played a role similar to this in Eye of a Needle. We played a German spy in England during World War II. Um, so check out Eye of a Needle if you haven't. Um, I was and in terms of casting, um, Robert Duvall and Donald Pleasance had previously appeared together in THX 1138. Um, Robert Duvall and Michael Caine later appeared in Secondhand Lions. Donald Sutherland and Robert Duvall appeared in MASH and Lady Ice. And Michael Caine and Michael Byrne, who played Carl, both starred as of as cousins in A Bridge Too Far. So that was right after Eagle has landed. So a lot of very incestual casting in Hollywood. Um, and what else do I want to mention? Um, I was really surprised to read the turmoil because this movie to me felt to a large extent tight. Again, I think it's a magnificent film, but it turns out that there was a lot of um, a lot of tumult. John Sturges, who's a Hollywood veteran, according to reports, according to IMDb, I'll say, uh, it says he was on the decline. He drank a lot and lost and he lost interest in the movie when producers harassed him about the script being too long and the characters were too deeply described. And his response was to tear the script in front of them. And then he did what they asked him to. So I don't know if he came in um, feeling somewhat distanced, but uh, according to IMDb at least, after that incident with the producers, he treated it as a money project. And Michael Caine, in his autobiography, said, and this is directly from Michael Caine's words, the picture was being directed by the Hollywood old-timer John Sturges, and we were all very pleased that this illustrious veteran had agreed to direct our film. That is, until one day when I was talking to him between setups, and he informed me that now that he was older, he only ever worked to get the money to go fishing, which was his passion. Deep sea fishing off Baja, California, he added, which was very expensive. The moment the picture finished, he took the money and went. Producer Jack S. Weiner later told me that he never came back for the editing, nor for any of the other post production sessions that are where the director does some of his most important work. The picture wasn't bad, but I still get angry when I think of what it could have been with the right director. We had committed the old European sin of being impressed by someone just because he came from Hollywood. Well, first of all, there's more reason to be impressed with Sturgis than just that he came from Hollywood. He's got a great body of work, but also um, what Caine might not have known is that scene with the producers. So I wonder if he came in, and then uh, he had this confrontation that changed his feelings. But also mentioned that Tom Mankiewicz said uh, Tom Mankiewicz basically echoed Caine, said John Sturges for some reason had given up, but he said editor Ann V. Coates was the one who saved the movie. And I think it's edited terrifically. So so kudos to Anna Coates. Um, but I've never heard of a director skipping out on his, except for Marlon Brando. But but that's a special case. We talked about that for One Eye Jacks. But anyway, I think it turned out spectacular. I love this movie to pieces. So I was really surprised at the rancor and how people like like Michael Caine feel it could have been great. I think it is great. So anyway, those are some initial notes on the movie. Again, Eric, thank you so much for picking it. And if I'm going to be entirely honest, I wish you'd pick more movies like this. Movies that are just a joy to watch. The hell with their place in UK cinema history. They're just amazing movies. And let's just enjoy watching movies that are great. And like, same for A Night to Remember, which is like, I'd never seen it. And oh my God, one of the greatest films ever made. So I would consider like at least every fourth movie, pick a movie that is just, blow our heads off. Amazing. But anyway, I love this movie. Thank you for picking it.
Thanks. I did want to follow up on a couple of things that you said before we turn to Kathy. First of all, Mankiewicz's father is, of course, Joseph Mankiewicz, who directed Sleuth that we did a few weeks back when that was a Seeless pick. And, of course, his uncle was the Mankiewicz that wrote Citizen Caine. As far as the Sturgis story goes, it's very ironic because Royfield Brown wrote in the comments that he's watching Grand Prix, and Sturgis had gotten fired from directing Grand Prix because he got into it with the Steve McQueen on that film. And then he got fired from Grand Prix, and then he got fired from Le Mans because he got into it with Steve McQueen on that film. And he had basically been trying to get a racing picture done, and when Lou Grade came to him with this film, he was like, oh, whatever, all right. He was making movies down in Italy that were being released under somebody else's credit with an Italian name, and he was just glad to have something he could put his name on. And but then what he didn't realize was that Lou Grade was not the type of producer that hires a director to come in and do his thing and get out. That he looked at the director the same way that he looked at the key grip or any other, that he's just his employee and that he's there to do a job. And Sturgis didn't feel like that. The man who'd Kurosawa had said had made the best remake of any of his films, his remake of The Seventh Samurai, deserved to be treated as if he was just a member of the staff, and so they got off on the wrong foot. But where this film you can see, because of course Ann Coates is one of the greatest editors of all time. She did Lawrence of Arabia, all of David Lean films. She did the Steven Soderbergh films up until the late 1990s and the early 2000s. I mean, she's just an incredible editor, and she does a great job. But you can see in the ADR post-recording where John Sturgis just stopped giving a shit. Because you have scene after scene where people's lips are moving and have absolutely no relation to what they're saying. For instance, the scene where Devlin is confronted in the bar. You can clearly see that the other actor is just reciting the alphabet. It's A, B, C, D, E, and at one point you can see him go count to 10, and that's because the guy couldn't remember his lines, and Sturgis says, because he'd been making those films down in Italy where they dub everything post-production. He said, just say the alphabet and count to 10, and we'll post-dub it. And then as soon as he got paid, he was like, I don't want to deal with Lou Grade anymore, and just disappeared. And he just didn't just disappear from this film without working. He disappeared. As a matter of fact, when he died, several of his people who had been friends with him for years and years and years had actually thought he had died years before because they hadn't heard from him. So those are my follow-ups on what I had to say. But yeah, this is a guy who just basically felt really burnt out by this point. Kathy, first of all, happy D-Day, and second of all, your reflections on The Eagle Has Landed.
Okay, so as usual, it's not going to be as complex or as interesting as You and I, but I considered this a schlock movie, just a kind of Sunday afternoon movie when I was a kid. And now I revisit it, like I said, I think the cast is extraordinary. And my rules for film as I get older get a bit more strict. I will watch anything with Anthony Quayle in it. But I don't like Michael Caine at all. Not so much about the acting, but about his tax evasion and his Tory stuff in the UK. But that's just me. But never have Nazi uniforms. And I'm no fan of Nazism. Let's make that clear. but never have the uniforms look so good. It kind of makes you want to win on that side. But the thing that is always interesting, I hope that's not offensive to anyone. But the thing that's always interested me is the Irish aspect. My heritage is Irish Welsh, and the Irish attitude to England during the war and to destabilising them as much as they could has always interested me. Donald Sutherland, as you both said, is absolutely magnificent in this film. And it reminds me a little bit of Went the Day Well, much earlier. I think black and white
Because it's
film.
basically the same film, right, Kathy?
Yeah. That's why it's reminding me. And
Just for those who haven't seen it, can you just kind of review the plot of Went the Day Well?
Okay, so some so some German deep sleeper agents, I guess, or deep immersed agents, basically take over an English village. And if Tom Sharp wrote it, it would be very funny because it's the differences that come out in grammar, I think, and in language. I've got it on in the background, actually. The eagle has landed. But it's a great film. There's heroism, there's cowardice, there's conformity and non-conformity, and it is a very interesting film. And I like alternate histories about World War II. I'll say that out loud now. But yeah, Donald Sutherland steals the film, and for men of a certain age, any film with Jenny Agutter, and for lesbians of a certain age, any film with Jenny Agutter is worth watching. And I'll land my plane there.
Thank you, Kathy, and we always love it. We always love it when you've got time to join us. Now, my thoughts on
let me follow. Let me just briefly follow up on just a few things. I just wanted to fill in because we've been kind of hinting at credits, but not spelling it out. So John Sturges, movies that he's done: Magnificent Seven, The Great Escape, Bad Day at Black Rock. He's got a really impressive body of work. And Tom Mankiewicz, other things he wrote include two Bond films, The Man with the Golden Gun and Diamonds Are Forever. And he also wrote Superman 2 and Lady Hawk. So these are both people with tremendous credits. And the other thing I wanted to mention is I forgot to mention, but when Kathy talked about how she doesn't like Michael Caine, I forgot to mention Michael Caine was originally offered the role of Devlin. They wanted Michael Caine to play Devlin, and he said no. I want to play. I don't want to play. Let me bring it up. Give me a second here. He turned it down because he didn't want to play an IRA member. That's why he turned it down, and not because he felt he couldn't do it. And instead, he requested to play Steiner. And of course, he didn't have to deal with. This is one of the clever things in the script. Michael Caine playing, doing a German accent would have been challenging. Not that he couldn't do it, but it was really smart that they said the character Steiner was practiced at playing a British citizen, and that he perfected his British accent, and so all Michael Caine had to do was talk like Michael Caine. So that was one of the because various actors struggled various on some level with their accents, and there wasn't a lot of consistency. But Michael Caine, did sound just like a British citizen. So that was like one of his clever things in the script. I just wanted to do those follow-ups, I'll shut up now.
No, hi, that was really good. Well, anyway, my history with this film is when I was a young boy, my father, he took me to the city to see the Eagle Land. This was one of this and Star Wars, 1977, are my two memories of seeing films with my father. And he was a big spy thriller fan, and so Jack Higgins novels were very big on him. And so this is a very early. I would have been 7 years old. So it's a very early cinema memory for me, and my distinct memory was that we saw it sometime in that summer, because we went from fighting with lightsabers to pretending we were in the graveyard outside of that church when we were playing in the backyard, playing the Eagle Has Landed. And so this is a film that's a mental. Now that does not mean that I unreservedly love it. I think there are a lot of scenes in this film that don't make any sense, and I you know what? I'm willing to forgive it because it's just so gosh darn entertaining from beginning to end. But I do want to talk a little bit about just kind of the ridiculousness, I suppose, of the plot, and the idea that it's Churchill's double, by the way, is the spoiler that gets shot, and Churchill is actually in Tehran for the meeting, and this is of course based on the fact that right before D-Day they had Monty's double running around Africa to convince the Germans that they couldn't have been invading that weekend. But why would they have set up a plot like this, the British, to have Churchill pretend to be in Norfolk for that weekend, allow it to leak back to the Germans, put all of those people, that whole entire village's lives at risk? As Hy pointed out, Larry Hagman gets shot. That just makes absolutely no sense. And yet, this has that same element that the better James Bond films have, where not only do you not care, but when you do question yourself afterwards, and it does kind of like, oh gosh, that kind of didn't make sense. You say to yourself, yeah, but when you do that, you're just robbing yourself of a very, very good time at the motion pictures. The same goes for the fact that the revelation comes from the fact that they were wearing their German uniforms underneath the Polish uniforms that they were using as disguises, because the Geneva Convention says that you can be shot on sight for wearing the enemy uniform. Well, of course, it doesn't say that, well, but if you wear it underneath, there's an exception or what have you. And the idea is some sort of an honor thing where if they get caught, they won't be spies and they'll be able to fight their way. No, it's a plot device so that when the paratrooper goes to save the little girl under the windmill, it'll be revealed that he's a German and they have to take the town over. And to question it is to deprive yourself of a fucking great scene, which is that scene where the soldier's body comes up out of the windmill. And so when I say that a film like this is in a way beyond criticism, I don't mean that in an insulting way. I mean it as a compliment. It is written in such a way that the kind of nitpicking and things that you do to a film like this is just being a shit to other people who, and this is one of those "what the hell is wrong with you people" films. When I looked up the Rotten Tomatoes scores, and maybe they're better now, but they were in like the high 60s, I think, a few years ago when I looked them up. And I was looking at the reviews, and they all were nitpicking at the same thing. And I was, why can't you just sit back and enjoy a kick-ass crime thriller, spy film, war film, because what I think makes this film great is not as a war film, but this is just a great caper film. and it's paced exactly like a caper film. I watched the 2 hour and 15 minute version. I think both Hi and Kathy did as well. And so, of course, you've got the first 40 minutes getting the team together, and then you've got the great scene where Devlin's out on the beach and he's seeing the parachutes landed, and you've got the thing that goes wrong, and then and all of that. And then High made a very, very important point when he talked about Michael Caine. Said I'd be willing to play a Nazi, but not an IRA member. But is he really playing a Nazi? Because this is a Nazi that helps a Jewish woman escape, tries to help a Jewish woman escape a concentration camp, and basically gets sentenced to death for it. Is Devlin really an IRA agent? Because of course he says expressly that he doesn't like planting bombs or doing anything that would endanger innocent civilians, because his fight is with the British army. It is, and matter of fact, his most repulsive trait has nothing to do with his politics or his betrayal of Britain, which, of course, since Ireland at that point was its own republic and neutral in the war, he was betraying no one. But I think it was his relationship with the barely 17 in the novel, and barely 18 Molly Pryor, the Jenny Gutter film. That to me is more questionable than anything that he does politically. And they've set this up so that you can enjoy the frickin' movie. You don't have to worry about these people's motivations. When it comes time to whether or not they're going to shoot the hostages in the church, unlike Went the Day Well, which was a heavy-handed piece of war propaganda, you have that moment like, oh my God, please don't do it. And you're not rooting for the Germans, but you're rooting for them to make the right decision, because you were given these type of characters where you're allowed to care about them. And again, I rather love the film more than most of the 1970s war films. Now, here's where I have the problem, and I think High hinted at this, which is the whole American section of this film, which is that running over of the same tired old donkeys leading lions led by donkeys trope, with Larry Hagman as the donkey and Treat Williams as the lion, where the commander is a frickin' idiot. I don't like it when Stanley Kubrick does it in Paths of Glory. When Tony Richardson did it in The Charge of the Light Brigade, I call it out time and time again, even in great films. And I think this is a great film that uses it as well. And as High pointed out, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and Hagman's performance sticks out like a sore thumb in this film, which has a lot of great comic moments, but they're subtle and they're intellectual, and they respond well. And it's not smart comedy; it is simply the lions led by donkeys comedy that we would get from a Carry On film or something like that. And it is interesting that the American edit that was about 2 hours, so about 15 minutes, mostly edited those scenes out. And of course, the thought was that, because it made Americans look bad or whatever. No, they just don't work as well with the rest of the film. And when you get to the actual meat of the film, it really comes back alive again with that twist at the end. And I'm going to end my opening reflections there. And
just to follow up on a few quick things, everything you said is great, Eric. I think the uniforms is one of the weakest parts in terms of logic, but what they do is they do establish that these soldiers have pride, and that they want to distinguish themselves from the Nazis. And you know, it's 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 shaky logic, but they do take a shot at justifying it. And uh, Kathy, I'll look forward to hearing. But do you want to, before I move on to the uniforms, do you want to respond to that? Because you seem like you have a different view on the uniforms.
I I you know, there are aesthetics with films, and you have to put away or park away from the morals. But the Nazi uniforms are great, down to the kind of windbreaker that Caine gets off the ship with, and the turtleneck, and the cigar, and the cap and stuff. And it's like, oh yeah, that's the side I kind of want to be on when you're a kid. I think the outfits in this are well thought out. Donald Sutherland's little rainproof coat and hat.
Sorry to interrupt, Kathy. No, High was referring to the fact that they wear their Nazi uniforms underneath the Polish paratrooper uniforms, and that is a plot hole.
That's ridiculous. Yeah, but the uniforms look great.
They're kick-ass, absolutely. Yeah.
Agreed. So,
and my point was, I think it's totally worth the plot hole because they were so kick-ass.
Yeah, I was just saying that I'm agreeing with Eric's point, basically, that that's one of the weakest parts in terms of logic, and there could have been another way to do it, so it was a little bit lazy, but you can kind of sort of I mean, at least they offer a rationalization for it.
This is not a film based in logic, is it?
I'm going to disagree with that. I think that it's very. I think Eric was absolutely on the money when he called it a caper movie, and caper movies, have to be written tightly. If there's a gaping hole in a caper movie, it can really destroy the movie. I think that it does play by its own internal rules and internal logic, and if it didn't, it would be a much weaker film. So I think that it. I don't think that the uniform thing is a deal breaker, because there is strange. What's that? Okay. I'm sorry. There was some weird noise. Um, I think I think it's something that you can swallow. Um, but I, I think that's kind of like, I don't think there are a lot of examples like that. Anyway, I also wanted to say to Eric, you're absolutely right. Um, Caine didn't play a Nazi; he played a German soldier. And that's, an important distinction, at least for his character, that in his mind he was fighting for his country. But the scene where he's trying to save the Jewish woman, not even necessarily from death, but just from unnecessary uh, humiliation and dehumanization, was really critical in establishing him and his entire troop as of paratroopers as sympathetic characters. So he didn't think of himself as a Nazi. He thought of himself as a good soldier. And, that again, you can say, but he was fighting for the Nazis who were exterminating who exterminated 8 million, I'm sorry, 6 million Jews and another 5 million gay people and gypsies and others that they didn't consider um, part of their tribe. And these are like the epitome of evil. So anyone who works for the epitome of evil is also evil. And that is a very reasonable argument. But, and that's why what this film does is really walking a tightrope. And I think one of the reasons it's magnificent is it manages to walk that tightrope and have us suspend our disbelief. And I mean, there, I hate Nazism more than most because of my background. Um, but so I was never exactly rooting for Michael Caine and his soldiers, but I, on some level, I I cared about what happened to him. I cared about what happened to Devlin. And Devlin was also, bottom line, if you're going to help kidnap or kill Churchill, then you're aiding some of the greatest monsters in history. And but nonetheless, Devlin is a magnificent character on some level. You can't help caring about him and caring about what happens to him. That's a really hard thing to pull off. I would say that is the biggest challenge in the movie, is pulling that off, and I think they do it, and that's really a testament to Mankiewicz and Sturgis and Anna Coates as the editor, that this very difficult tightrope they managed to get all the way across and emerge on the other side. So, but the scene with the Jews, that's based on something that really happened. Um, there was a railway station on the way to extermination camps. It occurred in October 1944 in the Netherlands. The paratroopers had given some of their food to the children, the Jewish children, when suddenly SS guards interfered, pointing their rifles at the paratroopers. But the SS were then surrounded by and outnumbered by the paratroopers, and they had to give up and let the paratroopers continue to feed the Jewish children. So this is something that actually happened, and it's it's an amazing scene, and it shows that people, even Nazis, are not just this block of nameless, faceless monsters. That there are gradations. There are there were people who were just soldiers and not Nazis, and even though they all worked on the side of one of the greatest evils on our planet, um, there, it's not appropriate to just look at them all as just put them all the same label on all of them, but to understand the human dimensions of it, and the I'm sorry, what did you say, Kathy?
She still gets shot, though. She still dies.
Yeah, because she had to, because they were all serving evil. They all deserved to die. In fact, Devlin deserved to die. But I'd say, Devlin is the least problematic of all of them. But I think it's kind of a tip to the hat that Devlin got away. There was at least a hint that Devlin could just as easily turn against the Germans if a wind blew another way. So there's that at least he's more of an agent of chaos than an agent 100% supporting the Axis powers. But this is complex stuff that the movie's dealing with. It's deep stuff. And you can call on some level absolutely it's a caper movie, but it really is very much a World War II movie, because of these issues that it's bringing up. And don't forget, a wonderful, absolutely wonderful subplot is what's happening in Germany, where you've got these machinations, you've got basically internal politics of the Nazis. And it helps to explain why they lost, is because in some ways they were fighting against themselves, that their whole way of viewing the world was really messed up, and it really helped keep them from winning the war. And that part of the movie is absolutely fascinating. We haven't talked about it, but it's one of the things that makes the movie great. The movie wouldn't be the same without that element of it. So this is absolutely a caper movie, but it's also absolutely a war movie. It's got so many layers to it, and anyone who gets stuck on some little detail is just really missing the big picture of how truly great a film this is.
I want to follow up on a couple of your points there, Hi. First of all, of course, the Devlin character. Now, this is in the written world, not in the film world. He had to survive because he's in, I think, 4 different Higgins now, including a direct sequel that he wrote called The Eagle Has Flown, which has, ridiculously enough, he has to, Steiner has been actually survived somehow and is being held in the Tower of London, and he has to get Steiner free, he wrote it in 1990, and this is a man who wrote hundreds and hundreds of novels, and Devlin was actually pretty much the main character of the novel version of this too, so of course he had to survive, but I want to get back to what you were talking about in terms of Robert Duvall as Rattle, Donald Pleasance as Himmler, and Anthony Quayle as Admiral Canaris, and how they're treated as characters, because unlike the Americans with the donkeys being led by lions trope, they are actually the Nazi high command is shown to be competent, but led by the ultimate donkey, which of course is Adolf Hitler, but they are also still, I think, deeply comic performances. Especially Donald Pleasance's Himmler, but even Robert Duvall, the way he says, "The eagle has landed," there's just a comic lilt to it. That's the so-called roll credits moment. That's the name of the movie, but he undercuts it with that rather light. We have the German, and he has the line about counterattack. Of course we have Germans. We are going to counterattack. That's what we do. We have German. And it's a very light German accent, but it's a comic performance. And of course, when we see him put to death, what was his sin? It wasn't his Nazism. It was hubris. He has that whole theory about Carl Jung and archetypes and coincidences being sign of something in the universe, and it is his hubris that got him killed, because of course Anthony Quayle's Canaris is attempting to save him from that fate, and says, just write up a report that shows that we cannot do this because that's what Hitler is like, and he'll just forget about it. But to High's point, he's being stabbed in the back by Himmler, and so you have the lions tearing themselves apart, and of course the donkeys across the English Sea in Norfolk, taking the bullets for it. But in terms of organizing, in terms of the plan itself, it's a very good plan and it's well organized. So you don't have that trope. These leaders seem to know what they're doing, which is the opposite of what I think of 1943 Nazi Germany, where I think that they just were at that point. They had lost the Battle of the Atlantic. They'd been they were getting crushed on the Eastern Front, and that last ditch save at the beginning of the film of Mussolini was because they were actually being pressured from the south. And why on earth they decided to allow the allies to completely come in and destroy their ability to make war or create an empire at that point makes absolutely no sense. That if there was a legitimate version of lions being led by donkeys, I think it was Nazi Germany at that point. But
That's a great point. And I think it comes over in the film in this was a stupid plan. Do you know what I mean? They're like, I think Admiral Canaris, didn't he have a plot against it? Can someone help me out with that?
Yeah, no, he was part of an assassination plot against Adolf Hitler. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't remember dates and stuff, but I do remember some bits, Eric. There are just. I have it on in the background now, so I'm watching it. I can't imagine. I must revisit or visit for the first time this Donald Sutherland character because Devlin because he's extraordinary. Donald Sutherland, I don't. Is he A-list or is he a character actor? I don't know, but I'll watch most things that he's in. And he has a twinkle in his eye in this film. He's obviously enjoying the role, and I need to watch it more. I need to watch this character more. And I'm only going to be granted that because of coming to this room tonight. And I'm sorry I'm rambling.
Well, Donald Sutherland.
First of all, to answer your question, Donald Sutherland at that point was like a very big movie star in the 70s. And it's a weird thing to say. Oh, hi, did I interrupt you? I must have had some internet problems. I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say what you're saying. For example, just as recently as within the last 10 years, Donald Sutherland was in the Hunger Games. He's he's a major figure in the Hunger Games. He's I'm trying to I'm trying to bring up his credits here to see.
I must confess, I've not watched the Hunger Games. There's some movies I avoid.
Well, you're not a teenage girl, so, I mean, it wasn't made for you,
like
Kathy.
How dare you, sir?
I'm teasing. Hi, but no, it's a young adolescent not novels, and there is a place. I didn't mean that as a diminutive at all. There's a place for them and there's an audience for them, and so my daughter absolutely loved those books. She's 20 years old right now, and I wouldn't say a word against them, but they're just not my cup of tea.
They're my cup of tea, but I'm trying to. Eric, can you rattle off the top of your head?
I'm going to start with MASH because, of course, you have you have Frank Burns, and you have Hawkeye Pierce from the movie MASH with Robert Duvall and Donald Sutherland sharing a scene. But you've also got. This is so weird to say, but in 1975, the two top drawing actors in the United States were Elliot Gould and Donald Sutherland.
I'm thinking,
But yeah, Don't Look Now.
don't look now. Don't look now. And Invasion of the Body Snatchers. He was a remake, obviously, of the I can't remember the actor's name, but
yeah,
he was
Phil
superb.
Kaufman directed the remake. But Steve McQueen was the original. But he was such a big movie star that when they went to go make the movie Animal House, it had to get one guaranteed movie star to agree to make the film, or the studio wasn't going to finance it. And the bankable star that would do it was Donald Sutherland. Just so yes, he's definitely in the 70s was not only A-list, but he was like in the. It's just a weird time for movies, but he was like the Tom Cruise of the 1970s. But that was because, of course, it was a much more independent-minded time for films, and so you had more of these kind of anti-heroes. But I think the film that's on the tip of High's tongue that he just couldn't remember, that everyone remembers Donald Sutherland for, was Clute. That was kind of his defining role, and that's when you see like that profile shot of Donald Sutherland, that's the movie most people think of.
He's also in The Dirty Dozen, and in oh goodness,
Oh,
Don't
he's
Look
superb.
Now.
Yeah, Dirty Dozen. Great call, I'd forgotten about that. He is superb in that.
And Don't Look Now is an
Well,
amazing movie.
Well, and Kathy, as a plebeian Brit, you have to remember him from those Amicus horror films, like all of those portmanteau films, like Tales from the Crypt, and which he got to start in. I can't remember the exact title of it. It was Doctor Something's in the early 1960s, and he was just
You're a real plebeian, Eric. I don't know that, but we're just getting to the beach scene where he just met Jenny Agutter in the dunes. He's lighting a cigarette, and I think they're both going to be very happy in about 10 minutes.
And he's like 42 years old, and she is 18. Yeah, no,
Don't do that to me. Jenny Agutter is at least 30 in this film, please.
In terms of his early career, his second film was The Castle of the Living Dead, and then it was followed up with Dr. Terror's House of Horrors, and then Die, Die, My Darling. So yeah, that's how he started.
Bitch gotta pay rent, right? So yeah. But I'm struck by the resemblance that Domhnall Gleeson has to him. I'm wondering if he might be his son.
You never know. Movie stars slept around a lot back then.
Oh, and he was also in Kelly's Heroes. He played Sergeant Oddball.
Ooh, that's one I should rewatch. I haven't seen that in many, many years. But yeah, but back to where we were.
One more war movie. He was in Johnny Got His Gun, and he played Christ.
Ah, yes, Dalton Trumbo. That is either the worst or best war movie ever made, depending on my mood when I watch it. Just it's American, so it doesn't really apply here. But there are times when I'm like, how the hell did this get made? And there'll be other times where I'm like, man, Trumbo was so deep. It really depends on my mood. but back to the performances. Pleasance is very comic in this, I thought, and of course he has a pedigree with war films as well, and he was of course in The Great Escape. He played the blind forger in that. And Anthony Quayle has a great pedigree, but he is kind of shown as almost the German version of Larry Hagman in this film. He, instead of kicking over a dustpan, but when he's going over how the meeting went with the Fuhrer, with Mussolini sitting in the room as this stupid idea is pitched to him, you kind of get a parallel between him and the Hagman character later, but of course that's the difference between Anthony Quayle, who can play it for subtle comedy, and Larry Hagman, who at that point, of course, was a couple of years off of I Dream of Jeannie, who plays it more as like the way he might have on a half an hour sitcom. You are much more invested in Quayle's character than you were into Hagman's character, and I think a lot of that has to do with the performance. I think both characters are actually written rather well. Like when I was reading the Jack Higgins novel, I didn't have this ridiculous view of Hagman's character, but that shows you how important performance can be to a film and to an interpretation of a character.
Agree totally, Eric, and I think it's a skill to make you invested in. It's just the scene now where they've got the uniforms on underneath, not only flak jackets but their parachute stuff. To make to make somebody awful, you're rooting for them. I think that's a skill that many movie makers probably lack. And I think writers get it right. James Ellroy is very good at that. To be hopeful that someone survives just because of their performance, it's like, what?
That's one of the amazing things about Game of Thrones, is that almost every character is someone that you have an emotional connection with. And almost every character could say, hey, this is my story. It's an incredible thing to pull off. And of course, this does not reach anywhere near the level of Game of Thrones, but I think it's playing in the same ballpark.
Well, and I think it achieves the same thing that Game of Thrones does, which is, of course, taking this group and making them entertaining as well. Which is that, and that I think you hit the nail on the head, but there with this. But I think the reason why Game of Thrones is so successful and lasted as well as it does is not because of its deep character studies, but because of its deep character studies of unlikable characters and its just pure entertainment value. And I think the reason why we're discussing this film all these years later and not hundreds and hundreds of others World War II films to choose from is because of this film's entertainment value and taking these kind of complex characters and making them entertaining for us. And I think that's what everyone from Higgins as the original novelist to Mankiewicz's screenplay to Sturgis's direction to Coates's editing is able to achieve. And it is something like that perfect pop song to me, which is that it has to have a nice beat and you can dance to it on the one hand, but on the other hand, there has to be also something that brings you back to it. And what brings me back to this time and time again is the things that we're talking about in the more abstract, the performances, the characterizations and things like that. But the thing that keeps it so that makes it rewatchable time and time again is how entertaining they make it, and that's what makes this, I think, a great film.
Well, I would go a step further. The writing is fantastic. This is a really great story, and it's a really great script. And the you know the cast of characters is I mean the cast of actors that were gathered together is some of our best actors. They're fantastic. Um, I'm not sure if Robert Duvall meant to be comedic, or was just struggling with his accent, to be honest. But these are amazing actors. And the editing, yeah, is first rate. Look, Sturgis is not a bad director. He's a great director who you know got in a felt unhappy with the production at some point, but I think it's a magnificent film. It's not perfect, but what film is perfect? Um, so I just to just say entertainment, I think is to not do our job. You know, it's written with tremendous. It's written to have tremendously interesting characters who are built out of contrasts, and to constantly surprise us and delight us. That's how it's written, and then you've got a cast that is able to pull it off. Um, and yeah, so it's got many things working for it, and I don't want to. Um, I want to give it credit for it being a really magnificent film, and the Devlin character is one of the great characters in all of movie history. I didn't know that he was a continuing character in the book series, but it makes total sense to me, Eric, when you said that would be the case, because he just pops off the screen. He's like bigger. He's bigger than any movie. He's like a three-dimensional. So that's he's like almost the opposite of that poor Larry Hagman character, who's also in his own movie, but not in a good way. So, but yeah, I in terms of why we're talking about this instead of any of hundreds of other war movies, it's because you, Eric, picked it. That's why we're talking about it. And again, I'm really grateful that you did. I wouldn't have seen this if you hadn't picked it. And if you know of other war movies that are at this level, please include them in future selections, because I really love this one.
And that's a great point, Hi. Kathy had mentioned that this is, that you could almost see where there might be a lawsuit from the makers of Went the Day Well, which was a very, very heavy-handed propaganda film that this film obviously was at least inspired somewhat by the plot of. But the difference between this to me and Went the Day Well is not just in the things that we were talking about, but let's also talk about some of the production value things, because that is a part of what makes a film great too. So let's talk about having a firefight in a graveyard. Here's my question. Why isn't this a thing? Why are we having our gunfights in warehouses and places like that all the time, when there is nothing? I have not seen a more kick-ass firefight than the one in the graveyard outside of the church here. And it is so perfect because you've got the headstones, so you can hide behind the headstones, and they're popping up, and they have to break out the church windows, and it just what and how wonderfully filmed that sequence is, and how wonderful the editing is, and where Ann Coates, I think, that does a bang up job is you're never confused as to who's shooting at whom or who's doing what or what have you during that whole entire sequence, which I know that sounds like it's a small thing, but it's actually a big thing, because 9 times out of 10 when you're watching one of these war movies, and I even like Kelly's Heroes or The Great Escape, you're going to have these action sequences that are just very, very confusing. This one is not. It's so incredibly straightforward, and it never bores you. Credit to, because we were kind of making it sound like Lou Grade was being somewhat of a butt to Sturgis's. We don't know both sides of that. Sturgis had become a heavy drinker, and he was bitter about his experiences on the 4 films that he'd done before this. Lou Grade put the money into this film and the production value into this film. That opening shot where it's going over the Alps with the helicopter, that shot cost more than Caravaggio combined, the film that we did last week, and they don't skimp on a thing in this, and it shows. And these are, Sturgis, he may have been on autopilot, but this was an artist at the top of his craft. When you look at Bad Day at Black Rock, which is still my favorite of his films and of the neo-westerns of the 1950s, when you look at, I'm not as big a fan of Magnificent Seven as Akira Kurosawa is, but he made a remake of Seven Samurai that the well-regarded director of the Seven Samurai said he absolutely loved. And these are all just top-notch people doing very, very top-notch work. And there is something to be said about great production value in a film like this, especially when you're dealing with such a big and great cast.
And by the way, we haven't mentioned this, but we should. This movie made money. This was a profitable film. Caine said something along the lines of, it didn't make as much money as it could have. But I mean, it was a financial success. It did very well.
Caine meant it didn't make as much money as he wanted. That's what Michael Caine's about. And yes, he's a good actor, don't get me wrong, but he's about bottom line.
Well, his contracts are always triggered at a certain dollar amount, and so when he says it didn't make as much money as it should, he means he didn't trigger one of his bonuses. And God bless Michael
That's
Caine.
hilarious.
But God bless Michael Caine. But he had one of the best agents in all of entertainment during the 70s and 80s. God bless him. That guy knew what he was worth, and he got it out of every production. I mean, he was very, very good at it. And even though John Huston tells the story of trying to recruit him and Sean Connery for the man who would be king, and Sean Connery basically saying, "Yeah, I'll do it as long as as long as I got free food on the set, just to be able to work with John Huston." And Michael Caine coming in with a huge list of demands and a part of the structuring and all of that, and Sean Connery actually sitting in a meeting with Michael Caine, signing basically a contract for a quarter of what Michael Caine was getting. And when somebody on set asked him, what was that about? He's like, I don't want to work that hard on paperwork. I am not an accountant. I am an actor.
And of course, Michael Caine got a wife out of it as well. So yeah, pretty good deal.
Well, I'm going to start bringing in. Go ahead.
Wait. Just to follow up on that. First of all, Caine has said The Man Who Would Be King is his favorite film, along with Sleuth. But he said the main reason is because he got to work with Sean Connery, who, by the way, is a great friend of his. So, I mean, I don't know if they were friends before the movie, but they're very good friends. And Sean Connery and I think maybe the director. Who do you remember who directed it?
John Huston. The three of
Yeah,
them
that's it.
all owned.
That's
The
it.
three of them all owned haciendas next to each other in Spain, in the same
Yeah,
town in Spain. All
that's
three of
it.
them
So
did
he said
before the movie was made. So they were all friends before.
there you go. So it's his favorite film because he got to work with Houston and Connery. So yeah, no, Caine did take those kinds of things into consideration. I remember in an interview, I'm pretty sure it was Caine, said that a consideration was where is it being shot? If it's being shot in Paris, that's he's more likely to say yes, and it's being shot in some terrible location. But in Caine's defense, I will mention an anecdote that I related when we covered Sleuth, which is when he was working with Laurence Olivier, they did the emotional scene where Olivier is going to shoot him, and for the first time. And at the end of the scene, Olivier turned to him and said, Michael, I thought I had an assistant. I see I have a partner. And Caine said, that's the greatest thing anyone ever said to me. So, Caine is, there's a reason he's done more films than almost anybody. He really is a great actor. And so I just wanted to mention that.
He's done a lot of films because he likes the paychecks as well. But,
Well, my point is that he's getting the offers to make all those films.
And surprisingly, because if you go through his filmography, people talk about Michael Caine as having slummed in a lot of films. I looked through, and I've seen most of actually the films that he's been in. Jaws: The Revenge, I would say, was really horrible, and he shouldn't have had anything to do with that.
I love that film.
Of course you do. Of course you do. But other than that, I don't see anything on that film that on his resume that he should be in any way, shape, or ashamed of.
The Swarm.
A pretty good horror film. John Carpenter is actually one of our better directors. Quite honestly, he here in the United States, Carpenter is considered alongside of like Martin Scorsese and Francis Ford Coppola as one of one of the founding members of the cinema of the 70s. So yeah, I understand by the time it gets exported back to England, it looks kind of schlotzy, but no, that wasn't a bad decision at all.
It's a personal dislike. I don't expect everyone to disagree, but he's a far right guy that doesn't want to pay tax, and that, in my book, makes him a douche.
Yeah, well, he's no coward, but he can't sing. Oh wait, no, he did that movie. He did that movie singing. He actually has a beautiful singing voice. So no, so he's a straight cisgendered no coward.
And can I just put out a word about Jean Marsh? I don't know if you guys know, and please stop me if I'm going on, but she's not only a superb actress, but she is a very, very great screenwriter. She wrote the series Upstairs, Downstairs in the UK, which was huge in the 70s. And she co-wrote it, I think. But
it was huge over here too, by the way, Kathy. The Upstairs Downstairs was shown over here. Alistair Cook used to introduce it every week. The Letters to America guy. used to introduce it every week on a show called Masterpiece Theater on our public television. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the ratings for Upstairs, Downstairs, 7 times as many people watched it in the United States as watched it in England. It was that popular.
That is lovely to hear, Eric. Thank you. If I was ever expecting a fact to make me feel good about that, it was going to come from you. But yeah, she's got chops, not just acting. Oh, Larry Hagman's just come in on the movie. Oh, he's a douche.
Yeah, his belly is full of scenery by that point. I just because he's eaten every single bit of it. Well, I'm going to start drawing this room to a close, and we'll start with Hi, and then move to Kathy since she's getting towards the end of the film, and that way she can kind of watch the exciting finale without us in her ears. But your final thoughts on The Eagle Has Landed, and then we'll just do some scheduling notes for June.
Gosh, Eric, I don't think anybody could follow your brilliant bit about Larry Hagman scene eating. I surrender. You've won the room.
Well, you'll get me next week. Did you have anything else, Hi?
I mean, at risk of being a broken record, I really love this movie. I'm really grateful that you picked it. Please, please do more like this one.
I wish they made more films like this one, Hi, but we'll do as many as we can find. Kathy, your final thoughts on The Eagle Has Landed.
I will go with Hi. More movies like this, but also what you said. Let's make more movies like this. It's fantastic. Like I say, when I was a kid, I'd be like, "Oh, my dad wants to watch this," but secretly I'd love it. And it would go on, and you know, all the characters that you see later in life and stuff, and oh, love it. But I would say let's look at Brotherhood of the Wolf for the next movie, and that's me done.
Absolutely not, but thank you for the suggestion, Kathy. No, next week we are actually going to be doing. I'm giving you a hard time, Kathy. Next week we're actually going to be doing the 1959 version of The Hounds of the Baskervilles, which is the Hammer version, starring Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee. Christopher Lee is, by the way, not Dr. Watson. He is actually playing the Earl of Baskerville in that film. But this was supposed to be the 7% solution. And thankfully, Hi got a hold of me right away and said, there is no way to watch the 7% solution unless you get the DVD off of eBay. And so we kind of put this in between. But to Hi's earlier point, this is, I think, a very, very entertaining film. And it also... I do like to talk about my Hammer films, and I do love me some Peter Cushing. Maybe a little man crush there. Who knows? You know. So I might have been a little biased when I. But yeah, this was a last minute replacement. But since we're starting the month, I just want to go through the rest of our schedule.
Eric,
we're going to be following. Go ahead.
To be clear, when I was saying pick movies like Eagle Has Landed, I absolutely did not mean Hound of the Baskervilles. This is in no way remotely close to entertainment value of this. And I'll have more to say next week, but please don't even put them in the same sentence.
Fair enough, Hi. That's a fun little teaser for next week. But we're going to follow that with the less entertaining but very important "A Taste of Honey" from 1961, directed by Tony Richardson, based on the Sheila Delaney play, very important part of our British social realism kitchen sink drama series. And then, as Hy pointed out, we're going to finish the month off with our viewer request, which was 1958's A Night to Remember, about the sinking of the Titanic, which just terrific film. Can't wait to talk about it. And getting to rewatch it with this room in mind is one of the reasons I actually rather like the addition of this audience suggestion, because it's not a film I would have chosen. And getting to see it, I'm as Hy said, I'm very grateful to the other Kathy, the one Kathy that's not here, for having put it. So, but that'll be our June schedule. Other than that, unless anybody has anything else, I'm just going to wish everyone a good night. Kathy, anything?
Yeah, just if you are affected by D-Day, or even if you're not affected, think about that sacrifice.
That's a beautiful note to end it on. And so we will end it on that note. And we're going to end the room in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Thank you again for listening to UK Cinema History. If you want to join the conversation, follow the link in the episode description. Every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where we record these episodes live on the Clubhouse app. Hope to see you there. And while you're listening, please rate us and review us on your favorite podcaster. It'd be doing us a great favor. And thanks again.